Okay, let's dig into this. We've got an article here, The Deep Spot by David Shade, published way back in OUI magazine, September 2000.
Hmm.
And you also flagged another one he wrote, something about using NLP to slip in the back door. But for today, we're really focusing on the deep spot, right?
Yes.
Exploring the main idea he's putting forward.
Exactly. Yeah, the core of this article is Shade proposing this idea of a specific area inside the vagina. He calls it the deep spot.
And he claims it's distinct from the G spot that most people talk about.
Right. So our mission here is to really unpack his descriptions of it, what it supposedly feels like, and the effects he claims simulating it has, all based on what's in this particular article.
Got it. So where does this idea even come from for him? He starts by recounting an experience, doesn't he, with a 22-year-old woman,
Yeah, a woman who, interestingly, had never actually orgasmed before.
despite being in a relationship. So standard intercourse hadn't done the trick, so to speak.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what's important here is how he contrasts it with the G-spot. He says he initially tried stimulating her G-spot, the usual approach,
Sure.
but apparently there was no response. Zero. And that lack of response is kind of what sets him off on this deeper exploration.
Okay, so the standard approach didn't work. Then what? He goes deeper.
Exactly. He talks about sliding his finger much deeper along the front vaginal wall as far as he could reach.
Right.
And he notes something interesting happens at that deepest point. He says the inner space seems to widen out a bit.
Widen. Okay.
Yeah, and the texture changes. Instead of spongy, it felt smooth and firm, but with these slight horizontal ridges or ribboning.
Yeah, smooth, firm, horizontal ribbing, way deep inside. That's his landmark for the deep spot.
That seems to be the key description, yeah. It's that tactile difference he's zoning in on.
And then he developed a specific technique for this spot.
He did. He describes it as a come-hither motion with his fingertip, curving it, pressing firmly against those ridges he felt, and then sort of gently pulling downwards.
Firm pressure, pulling down on the ridges. And the result?
Well, he says she reacted almost immediately. Looked a bit concerned at first, apparently, which is maybe understandable.
Yeah, new sensation.
But after a few minutes of this specific stimulation, he claims she experienced her very first orgasm.
Wow. Okay. So no G-spot response, goes deeper, finds this ridged area, uses the come-hither motion, and success.
That's the sequence he lays out, moving from that initial concern straight into pleasure. It strongly suggests he hit upon something sensitive there.
Definitely. And he mentions her reaction afterwards too, right? Asking to be kissed.
Yeah, sort of breathless, apparently. It adds a personal touch to the discovery.
And importantly, he notes that eventually this woman became able to orgasm easily, like in any way.
Right. That's a really significant claim he makes. It's not just about that one time. He implies this discovery, this stimulation, might have unlocked her overall orgasmic potential.
So potentially a lasting effect, not just a one-off trigger.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Yeah.
That stimulating this deep spot could have broader benefits for sexual response.
Okay, so that's the initial experience, but then he tries to ground it anatomically, right? He doesn't just leave it as an anecdote.
Correct. He brings in Gray's Anatomy, the medical textbook.
And he identifies the area he's describing as the cavity of the cervix.
Exactly. And to help explain the shape and location, he uses this analogy.
The Frisbee analogy, I thought that was quite helpful, actually.
It is pretty visual, isn't it? He says, imagine the underside of a Frisbee. The cervix is like the central nub pointing downwards.
Okay, got it. So the cervix is in the middle.
Right. And if you're holding that upside-down Frisbee, your fingertips naturally land on the inside edge, the rim.
Ah, I see.
And he connects that to his technique. That come-hither motion is like curling your finger down that inside edge of the Frisbee rim.
That clarifies the motion he's describing, pressing against that inner edge.
Yeah, it gives you a sort of 3D picture. And he also adds that the uterus and cervix usually tilt.
Right, lower towards the front, higher towards the back.
Exactly. Which becomes important later when he talks about different positions for stimulation.
And he says the entire inside edge of that Frisbee, the whole cavity of the cervix, is sensitive, not just one specific point on the rim.
That's what he claims, yes.
Yeah.
The sensitivity extends around that internal edge, suggesting maybe different parts could be stimulated effectively.
Interesting. So it's more of an area or a ring than a single spot?
Potentially, based on his description in the Frisbee analogy, yeah.
Okay, so then he applies this idea to women who mainly have clitoral orgasms.
Yes, he shares another story. A woman who'd only ever achieved orgasm through direct clitoral stimulation.
A common experience for many.
Absolutely. And he says he used his deep spot technique on her.
Yeah.
Within minutes, according to him, she had her first vaginal orgasm. He even quotes her.
Oh, yeah. What did she say?
Something like, "Oh, David, I'm going to come. I have never come this way. Oh, I'm going to see him."
Wow. That's emphatic. Really highlights the novelty and intensity for her.
It definitely underscores that point. And again, he claims that after a few sessions focused on, as he puts it, awakening her vagina.
Which involved stimulating the deep spot, but also the general vaginal walls.
Yes, varied stimulation. After that, she was apparently able to orgasm easily during intercourse too.
So again, that idea of it unlocking a broader responsiveness, not just being a single trigger point.
Precisely. It suggests stimulating the deep spot might help women, bridge the gap to different kinds of orgasmic experiences.
Okay. Now, he also talks about different ways to stimulate at different positions, the hands and knees position, for instance.
Right. He brings up that tilt of the cervix again.
Lower in front, higher in back.
Yeah. So in the hands and knees position, he argues, you get better access to the deeper back wall of the vagina, hitting that higher part of the cervical cavity rim.
Okay, interesting angle. And he compares the sensation.
He does, quite directly. He likens it to the sensations some women feel during anal sex
Huh.
and suggests this position can lead to particularly powerful orgasms for some.
He tells that story about the woman holding onto the bathroom sink, doesn't he?
Yes, a very vivid anecdote. She apparently called it the granddaddy of them all, the most intense orgasm she'd ever had.
That certainly paints a picture of potential intensity.
These different positions just highlight how changing the angle might stimulate different facets of this deep spot area, potentially leading to different, maybe more intense sensations.
Right. It's not just one spot, one technique. It's about understanding the anatomy and how to access it.
Exactly. And then he gets more specific about the techniques themselves and the sensations. Firm massage is key, he says.
Firm pressure on the deep spot.
Yeah. And he tries to link this massage directly to what happens physiologically during orgasm.
How so?
He suggests massaging the back of the deep spot might mimic the natural ballooning effect that happens there during orgasm.
Okay.
And massaging any part of that deep spot rim could simulate the muscle contractions that cause the cervix to dilate during orgasm.
So he's saying the massage basically simulates the physical events of orgasm itself.
That's the idea he puts forward, which leads him to make that very confident claim.
The "she can't HLP but come" line.
Yeah, it's a bold statement reflecting his strong belief in this direct cause and effect.
He also contrasts deep spot stimulation with clitoral stimulation, talking about advantages.
His main argument is about sensitivity limits.
Right, that the clitoris can become almost painfully sensitive after orgasm starts, limiting how long stimulation can continue.
Exactly. But he argues the deep spot doesn't have that same limitation. It can potentially be stimulated for longer, allowing for more sustained orgasms.
More sustained pleasure without hitting that sensitivity wall.
That's the idea. Plus, he points out that the internal muscle contractions continue naturally after orgasm anyway, so stimulating the deep spot kind of aligns with that ongoing process.
That's an interesting distinction. Different pathways, different characteristics.
It offers a different perspective on achieving prolonged pleasure or potentially multiple orgasms, maybe avoiding some clitoral overstimulation issues.
Does he mention other techniques besides the single finger, come hither?
He does briefly mention one for when a woman is lying on her back.
Okay.
Using two fingers, the index and middle, held about an inch apart, and rubbing firmly against the front part of the deep spot rim.
So another option, different position, targeting the front edge, shows some versatility.
Yeah, it suggests it's not just one rigid method. But then he pivots to what he considers the most powerful approach.
Which involves focusing on the back of the deep spot again?
Yes, the posterior side. This is where he mentions needing potentially long fingers to reach that deep along the back wall.
Okay, so reach can be a factor here.
Seems so. And he emphasizes that same come-hither stroking motion, but specifically directed against the back rim.
Got it.
And he describes a specific sensation, this pocketing, deep in the back of the vagina when a woman is highly aroused.
A pocketing, like an indentation.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
A receptive space opening up. And his instruction is to press the fingertip firmly against the back wall of that pocket.
Right into the back of it.
And simultaneously press the pad of the finger down onto the PC muscle, which he says you'll feel contracting strongly right underneath.
Wow, that sounds intense, feeling the muscle contract like that.
He describes it vividly, saying the muscle might feel like it could break your finger. It contracts so hard.
Goodness.
And his final word on that technique is that it will drive her crazy. really emphasizing the extreme sensation he believes it produces.
Okay. So, pulling all this together from David Shade's 2000 article, we have this concept of a deep spot, distinct from the G spot, located deep inside around the cavity of the cervix, identified by touch, and stimulated with specific techniques, potentially leading to intense, sustained orgasms, even for women who haven't experienced them vaginally before.
It's a good summary. You see him blending his anecdotal experiences with these anatomical references, like Gray's Anatomy and the Frisbee model, to build his case. It definitely pushes beyond the G-spot focus prevalent at the time.
Absolutely. What really stands out looking back at his descriptions, for me, it's the detailed, tactile descriptions, the smooth, firm, ridged area, and the reporting outcomes, especially unlocking orgasms for those women. It's a unique perspective.
Yeah, for me, it's that emphasis on deep internal exploration and the attempt to directly link very specific massage techniques to the body's actual physiological responses during arousal and orgasm,
Yeah.
the ballooning, the
It
contractions.
really challenges conventional thinking about female sexual response from that era.
It does. And it leaves you with a pretty interesting question to think about, doesn't it?
Which is?
Well, how might a deeper, maybe more nuanced understanding of this internal anatomy and perhaps these varied stimulation techniques Shade describes contribute to a fuller, maybe more satisfying sexual experience overall?
Hmm. Could exploring these less discussed areas lead to, well, deeper pleasure?
Perhaps. Maybe this dive into the deep spot article gives people something new to consider or even, spark some curiosity for their own exploration.